Mr. F. E. Bramley writes, I have only had one dowsing engagement all this year, the worst year I have ever struck. It was to assist the police in a search for a missing mother and her little son at Sileby last Easter. Sileby lies about 4 miles from here. The relatives engaged me for the search, and I was again successful, and they were very well satisfied and thanked me for what I did. It was a very sad case, and I offered to help them and do my best. The father had lost his only daughter by illness a few months before, and he had spent 9 months in the sanatorium with tuberculosis. An ugly rumor had got around that it had preyed on his wife's mind and that she had drowned herself and the remaining child. She had last been seen walking with a little boy along a lane leading to the river. The relatives told me that she had received a letter to say her husband was fit to come home from the sanatorium, and she had started to walk to a neighboring village to tell her sister the good news. As she was so glad. This was the last seen of her and the child. The police had spent 8 days dragging in the river without success. The relatives, who were very distressed about the rumors concerning her, then engaged me to see if I could trace her. I borrowed the boy's cap and the mother's stockings for samples. I obtained 9 serial revolutions from her stockings and 7 revolutions of the rod from the boy's cap. I found in my previous searches that serial numbers differ on various people's clothing. I was able to trace where she had walked and also where the child had walked. The clothing took me down the lane to a bridge over the canal and then over the river, which was heavy in flood at the time. They had to cross these bridges to get to the village where her sister lived. As this part of the district is covered with water when the river is in flood, a double-plank raised footwalk had been built years ago for pedestrians. By the 2 separate serial numbers I was able to trace which plank the mother had walked on, and also which plank had been used by the 5-year-old son. I also got dips of the rod at intervals on the handrail, which showed where the mother had grasped it. They had walked side by side until they came to the bridge spanning the river. Part of this bridge had collapsed, and one single plank was all they had to walk on here. At this spot the boy's trail ended suddenly in the center of the plank, as the rod ceased to work. I then took her stockings and commenced again, and found the mother had crossed the plank, and it led me to the edge of the river below the bridge. Summing it up, it showed the child must have got dizzy in the center of the plank, slipped in suddenly, and been swept away by the flood waters. The mother had rushed across without taking hold of the handrail in a hurry to rush into the water to save him as he was being swept downstream. We dragged at the spots where the rod gave reactions for the 2 different serial numbers. I said this marked the positions of the 2 bodies, which were some little distance apart. We did not recover them at the time, as the bottom of the river is very oozy black mud. I told the police they were stuck fast in it, as the drags were covered with this mud. The 2 bodies eventually came up a month later, the boy's at the spot I indicated for his position, and the mother's body was found floating lower down after a barge had gone along the river. The boy's clothes were bulging out with the mud which had pinned him down, so I was successful once more.